Hi, welcome to another Urban Outdoorsman SoCal video. My name is Danny Milton, and today we're at Seal Beach. We're going to be doing a little comparison video between the Zhiyun Weebill Lab and the DJI Ronin SC. I just picked up the Ronin SC, and we're going to run it through its paces. We're going to do a couple of, gimbal moves using the pan follow tilt, the vortex mode, and the flashlight mode on the Ronin SC. See which one does better, and see which one I'm going to keep and which one I'm going to send back. Right now I have my camera on the Weebill Lab and it's in selfie mode. I'm a big guy, I'm like 6'2", about 230, 240 pounds, relatively strong, and I've got my arm out, just doing this part of the video, and it gets a little heavy after a couple of minutes. I have switched hands a couple of times. This is not the first time I've done this take. Just to give you an idea of what you're looking at as far as if you want to use this for vlogging. Okay, so we're just going to go through the different modes of the Weebill Lab. Right now you're looking at the Ronin SC on top of my tripod. We're doing the pan follow, moving to the pan follow tilt. You're moving the camera right to left and up and down. Here I've got the gimbal locked, holding the front trigger, moving the gimbal right to left and up and down just to see how well you can keep the subject center frame. Doing a little bit of the vortex mode here, holding the camera in kind of like the flashlight position, rotating the camera 360 degrees. Here we're doing the underslung mode where you have the tripod legs on the back and you're holding it in kind of a briefcase style. Now we're doing the Ronin SC. You can see the Weebill Lab is on top of my tripod. Doing the pan follow here. Just walking around, keeping the subject center frame. Doing the pan follow tilt. Moving right to left and up and down with the gimbal as I follow the subject. Here we're doing the 360 mode with the Ronin SC. It's spinning around really fast, but that's just a setting in the modes. It does keep the subject pretty center frame though. Here I've got the Ronin locked out, just moving the gimbal right to left and up and down. There is a little bit of a rolling shutter, but that's just because of the camera, not something the gimbal is doing. And here we have it in the underslung mode or briefcase mode. It's doing a really good job staying nice and level. Okay, so this is my gear bag, and typically when I have the Weebill Lab here, let's make sure that's in frame. This is how I've got the bottom part taken off, the tripod mount, nothing on there, just the gimbal itself. Because this plate is so wide, you kind of have to jimmy it in here, and that's the way it sits. This part, or this motor right here, sits a little bit high, so it kind of pushes on the top plate of this a little bit. So I put this in here, you can see it's kind of bulged up a little bit right there, but the bag will still close fine. I don't have any problem with it. Bag's closed, it's just popped up a little bit higher right there. So you're gonna take that out, and there's no other way to get that any lower. You can see like that. Just that mounting plate is so wide too that it kind of this area has to be a little bit bigger, but this is the best place for me to put it. So we're gonna put in the Ronin SC and see how that fits. Okay, so now we've got the Ronin. I'm gonna take the phone mount off. That's gonna go off. You can see I've got the focus motor on there. We're gonna take tripod off. We're going to unlock, take off the battery. Let's see if I can get this in here better way. So that's pretty low, but you can see that this arm is sticking up kind of in that same place. I think that's about as good as it's going to get, so I'm going to have that same problem. Just a little bit of a rise right here. Let me just put the battery in like that. Phone mount down there in the bottom. So yeah, it does pack in there easier because you can take the battery and the phone mount off, but it does have that same little spot where it's going to be a little bit too high here to fit in the backpack properly. So I went up to Sky Park this past weekend and decided to take my gimbal with me to get some extra shots. Right here I just have the gimbal out my car door, and I'm doing kind of a little pan follow from right to left. Right here we're just panning left to right, following these mountain bikers going off this jump. This is just a slow pan from left to right, and I was about to walk up the stairs and I'm tilting up with the joystick. Here's another pan follow from the left to right with a little bit of slow motion added just to see how smooth it'll be. Here we're panning from right to left, going from regular speed to slow motion and then back to regular speed again. And this shot was really fun. I was following my wife around in the skating ring and I had the gimbal down low to the ground and I wanted to see how smooth it would go from panning to just kind of rolling around behind her, and the shot came out really well. This last shot is me just standing still holding the gimbal, using the joystick to pan from the bottom to the top of the tree. So quickly we're going to go over some of the pros and cons of each of the gimbals. So I think the greatest feature of the Weebill Lab is the image transfer. As long as you have your camera plugged into the gimbal will transfer the image coming out of your camera to a compatible phone as long as you have the app downloaded. The second feature of the Weebill Lab is the actual on-screen display. There is a display in the handle. You can change all of your settings, your motor strength, parameters, all kinds of things like that, right there on the screen, on the gimbal, without having to connect to an app to do things like that. So two of the other features I like about the Weebill Lab are being able to switch the tripod mount to the back of the Weebill so you can use it in the briefcase mode, and also balancing the Weebill Lab compared to the Ronin was much easier. The Weebill Lab has two locking mechanisms on the bottom of the mount that control the back to front and the side to side motion, whereas the Ronin only has one screw that does both of those. So some of the pros to the Ronin SC are the better button layout. Where you hold the Ronin SC is just a grip. You have all of your thumbstick is above there, your mode button is above there, your record button is all off of the part that you grip. So it just makes it a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more easier to control. Whereas, with the Weebill Lab, your hand is covering all of those buttons and you have to remember to lock it out. Another great feature of the Ronin SC is the joystick. I have the DJI Mavic 2 Zoom, and the joysticks on the controller for that is very similar to the joystick on the Ronin SC. It's very easy to use and is much more of a tactile response compared to the Weebill Lab. So one of the things that drew me to the Ronin SC was that it's made by DJI, and that their user interface and their app control is just going to be phenomenal. Like I said, I have the Mavic 2 and their user interface is great with that, and I was hoping I would get the same with this Ronin SC. So the last couple of things I really like about the Ronin SC is that you can break it down into a smaller package. You can take off the tripod mount. You can also remove the battery grip from the Ronin SC, and it will fit into a much smaller space than the Weebill Lab will. And the last thing we're going to talk about the Ronin SC is one of the things that I like is that the motors seem much smoother and actually seem stronger than the Weebill Lab motors do. So now we're going to go over a couple of the cons of each device. Now, nothing's perfect. There's always room for improvement. The Weebill Lab does seem to have a couple more cons than the Ronin SC does. So the biggest problems that I have and other YouTubers that I've watched videos of is that the Weebill Lab just feels, it's mainly plastic. A lot of the arms and stuff and the motors, those are all aluminum or metal. But the handle itself it's a very kind of cheap feeling plastic. And I saw a lot of people, discuss this, and I was kind of like, well, how does one plastic feel cheaper over another plastic? And it really does. It's just the way that it's manufactured and put together. The Weebill Lab plasticky kind of handle where all of the buttons are does feel doesn't feel solid. It's not flimsy. It just doesn't feel as solid as the Ronin SC's handle does. Probably the biggest con of the Weebill Lab is when you do have the tripod mount handle on the back and you're actually having to hold the bottom part of the Weebill Lab gimbal. All of those buttons are underneath your hand. Now, you can lock out all of those buttons, so when you're holding it, you're not moving the joystick or anything like that, or pushing one of the other mode buttons. But it just doesn't feel comfortable having all of those buttons under your hand while you're moving it around. If you're holding it with your left hand and then you've got your right hand, on the tripod mount, and you're moving it around like this, you have all those buttons underneath your left hand, and it's just not comfortable, and it's kind of a weird place to have it. Last concern about the Weebill Lab is the app and the user interface. I would have, sometimes you would have your phone plugged in and you'd have your camera plugged into the gimbal and you would turn everything on and it wouldn't do the image transfer. You'd have to unplug the cable, plug everything back in, shut everything off, turn it back on, and hope, wait for it to connect to the Wi-Fi and then, do the image transfer and all that kind of things. And it just, sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Some of the parts of the app never really worked for me. It shows that you're supposed to be able to change your shutter speed and your aperture in app to your camera. I have the A6400, the Sony A6400. It does work with the Weebill Lab gimbal, so there shouldn't be any problems with that. I was never able to change my shutter speed or the aperture. You can change your white balance. Great, I don't need to change the white balance. So the other thing you could change was the exposure level, but I don't ever change the white balance or the exposure level, so it didn't really work for me. Now every time I would try to take a picture using the app, that always worked. Every time I hit record on the app, that would always work. It was just a couple of small things here and there, a couple little bugs that just never really worked well with the app and the gimbal that kind of left a sour taste in my mouth. So the biggest drawbacks of the Ronin SC is that there's no image transfer, which the Weebill Lab does have, and there's no monitor or screen on the actual gimbal itself so that you can change, the parameters or the modes, anything like that. All of that stuff has to be done in app. Now, there are buttons to change the mode, but if you want to change what those mode buttons do, you actually have to connect your phone to the gimbal and then go in and do all that kind of stuff. So it's two kind of really big things, but now that I've been using it, it's really not that big of a deal to me to not have that image transfer. I just, I kind of flip up the screen a little bit and I just check my app. The app always connects, right away, so it's really easy to change those settings if I do need to. Okay, so overall, what do I think? Do I like the Weebill or do I like the Ronin SC? Now, the Weebill does offer more out of the box. It has the image transfer. It has the on-screen display. It also has a dedicated built-in focus motor, so if you want to go that route, you can as well. But like I said, the app doesn't work very well. The gimbal itself is a little bit glitchy. It feels a little bit cheap. The Ronin SC is very solidly built, has a great battery. The UI on the app and just the interface itself using the gimbal, with one hand, two hands, whatever, feels much better. Like I said, the app is amazing. If you want to add the focus wheel and the focus motor, you can do that as well. If you want to add that on-screen display to the Ronin SC, I believe it's about $125. I don't really need that. Very rarely do I ever change any of my settings. I don't do it that often, so it's not really necessary. The Ronin just feels better built. And using it for the last couple of weeks like I have, every once in a while where the camera gets a little crazy, like if you move it too fast and the motors get a little, twitchy and it loses its balance, all you have to do is just double click it and it just goes right back to center to where it's supposed to be. Now, when that would happen with the Weebill Lab, if you got, like if I dropped it down into suitcase mode too quick or I spun it around too fast, the motors would just quit and you would have to shut it off and turn the gimbal back on. Whereas the Ronin, you just double click the button, boom, goes back to square, and you're all good to go. So I'm definitely going to keep the Ronin. I've already sent the Weebill Lab back. So hopefully this video helped you out. My preference is going to be the Ronin SC. The Weebill Lab is a good gimbal. It's just not for me. I think that the Ronin SC is just going to last me longer and it's going to work better for me and myself. If you found this video helpful, please leave a like down below. Do all that fun stuff. Share, comment. Definitely subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this. I go out and I'm all over the place, mountain biking, surfing, hiking, doing photography stuff as well. I'm going to be doing more reviews as far as some of the gear I use as well. So stay tuned to the channel and thanks a lot. And the last thing you do to help me out would be to click on one of these boxes up in the corner. One's going to take you to a rides playlist. Another one's going to take you to a most recent video. And always you can click on the logo in the center, the Urban Outdoorsman SoCal logo, to subscribe. Thanks a lot.